Shut up and sit down.
Welcome once again to the Shite podcast show. I'm your host Mark Kearns with you on episode 102. Moving swiftly away from the 100th episode. I'm moving quite slowly towards the 200th episode. Where, second show past the milestone of 100, and the Emmy Awards nominations are out. It was 71st Emmy nominee awards, and some interesting nods for different TV series is out. So I thought I'd do pretty much a show on the Emmys and shows that were nominated and weren't nominated. I thought maybe should have got a nod for different awards. We'll go through them, talk about some of the surprises, some of the things I liked about the series, and some of the ones why I'm surprised, because there are a few kind of surprises of shows that weren't included in the Emmy. So we'll go through all of that. Now, if you're kind of a bit of a film buff or TV buff, you'll be mildly interested. I'm pretty sure you probably have heard the nominations by the time you're listening to this, but you can talk it over. You can talk into your phone, even though I can't hear you. You could always send me a voice note on Messenger as well. And if we are ever doing recaps, we might play them out. That's always an option as well. Or send me your thoughts of what you think of the nominations. Maybe we do a follow-up show. I know next week I have Gus on, and we're going to be talking about comic books, so we might address it. If you have any opinions, let me know on all social medias. And you can also do on email by shitalkpodcastshow@gmail.com. You can email it to there if you want to get your opinion on anything we're talking about today. Let's get into it. Anyway, the first big surprise was Game of Thrones, a record-breaking 32 nominations for various different things about their worst season of all time. Well, I guess of the 8, it's definitely the worst. By pretty much every fan's description of it, even people who were kind of backing up or kind of explaining what the directors were trying to do in season 8, who are mildly praising the series, will point it was still the worst. And so it was quite surprising that it got a record-breaking amount of nominations. So let's go through some of the ones that kind of most irritate fans. So the first one, outstanding writing, and I think I covered this when Game of Thrones were putting forward their shows for different. So every show, every director or show like Netflix or HBO has to put forward which shows they want to nominate and for which category, and based on the episodes they put forward different episodes. So Game of Thrones directors would have had the whatever episodes they want from the season to put forward for outstanding writing. So you would think, most fans would say, the second episode, one leading up to the Battle for Winterfell, was the best episode of the series. It's one where the most development of the characters came through. It was one where we kind of seen all the characters, how did they got to this point, some of the kind of betrayals that happened along the way. People had to own up to certain things that happened throughout the series in this episode. It was really, really well done. Florence Machine did a really good song as well for it. It was brilliant. And by far it was probably the best scene. I think Battle of Winterfell there's parts of it was good, but you barely could see a lot of the episode. So that kind of gets to would get marks down in my book for where you squinting your eyes, go, did I miss something? So, but I think the second episode was probably the best of the episodes. They could have picked that one. They didn't. They picked the final episode, which by most people, because of the ending, I'm probably not going to say because there might be people who are listening to who haven't seen Game of Thrones yet. It's been months. I can probably talk about it safely enough, but I'm probably sure there will be people out there who haven't seen it. But the ending itself pissed off most people enough to the point where you have to have pretty big balls to put that forward for outstanding writing. The one that people criticized the most was its writing, and they said, no, I actually think it's the best. and that's why I'm going to put it forward. So I don't know why they did it, and I don't know if I just maybe it's kind of as a way that when you go to filmmaking school, movie school, there's like certain technical aspects that make a thing great, even if it's not enjoyable to watch or doesn't make any sense when you're finished watching it. There's technical aspects that they seen in this episode that made it. They thought, well, I think it was still might be a chance to be in with a nomination, even though it was a steaming pile of crap. I don't know. I'm not that well up on movies, but in terms of just fans who watched the show, however, so upset about how it ended, that you have to have pretty big balls to put that one forward for outstanding writing. The next one that kind of pisses off people is outstanding drama series. Like that's going to take the series as a whole. So it wasn't just that like people were pissed off with the first episode. They're going to piss off the way the series ended. It was really, really rushed. It didn't really need to be rushed, and I don't think they really wanted to do an 8th season, and so they kind of just crammed it into like a mini season. I've crammed as much crap into it as possible, and and we didn't get that with any other seasons. They were all really well spaced out. Big moments got a chance to, like, you never have all this stuff happen in one episode that you would in any other season, because it kind of loses the specialness of it, and there's then massive plot holes because of this, because the season was so rushed and the season was shorter than any of the other seasons. So like so putting up for outstanding series, I guess you're gonna, like, if you're not in, you can't win. You might as well put yourself forward and maybe get a nod. But the fact that it got a nod is probably outrageous in itself. Not that the Game of Thrones was put forward. And then best outstanding director, I also got a nod for it, which once again is kind of annoying as well, because like pretty much this is one where George R.R. Martin basically took a backseat, wasn't as involved in the season as earlier seasons, and it kind of showed. People are saying they divert a lot from what the books were, even though the books aren't finished yet. We don't know the ending yet, but the more and more control that George R.R. Martin gave to the directors, you kind of seen a discontinuation from the books. And I know for like various different reasons there had to be. And when you're given a chance to adopt anything to film from a book or from any other medium, you kind of are given creative control over to it. So you always want to put your slant on it. You always want to make something of itself. Because like there's very little point of reading making series directly from the books, word for word, direction from direction. You don't want to differ too much, or else you have a series like Gotham, which just pisses everybody off. If you want to throw on your own stance, add slight changes to it that maybe fans will like. And I just think it was already so far away from what the books were like, and it wasn't great. But by the end of it, but also interestingly enough, on Game of Thrones news, while we're on the topic of Game of Thrones, George Martin has said that even though there has been such a backlash of reaction to the end of the season, or TV HBO season, that he will not change the ending of his books. Now, this isn't to say that the books will have the same ending of the show, so he could be doing a really good kind of like way to rile up the fans, kind of generate interest, is to say, well, I'm not going to change it. But he has also said that the ending, there'll be parts of what we've seen in the show that are similar, there's parts that will be different, and he's been very scriptive in the terms of what the book will be. Now, you would imagine, would the show actually change the ending that George R. R. Martin had said to them that they're going to do? You don't know. It's all in the air. But George Martin has said that he won't change it based on fans' backlash of the ending of the show, which got like backlash of itself. So that's really interesting, because it kind of points to, oh well, it could be very similar to what we've seen at the end of the final episode of Game of Thrones. So that came out anyway, and I think he was always going to write the books. He spent so long writing the books. He's not going to change it based on fans' reaction anyway. You imagine he might alter things differently, or he'll try to expand on different ways. But apparently, he's sticking to his guns, and what way he wanted to end the book, he's going to end the book, and that's going to his MO. He's not going to really change it based on popular opinion. He's always going to stick to what a book that he wants to write, that he's happy with once it's released. So I can't say I'm hugely surprised about George Martin coming out with comments like that. Starks are going to get their own spin-off series. There's been kind of photos released of a pilot episode that is in the making. It kind of just shows ships on a kind of sea. It has a kind of very early adoption of Stark flag, so that's how you know it's Starks. The show was based on the older Starks, a few generations previous to the storyline that we're used to now. They're also going to be bringing in a lot more houses. So people who are fans of the series that hasn't read books, which I still say would be majority of people who have watched the show wouldn't have read the books. A lot of people found it really, especially in the first few seasons, found it really, really hard to get grasp with all the characters and all the houses and the interaction of how they all came together and the history behind the current season. I think now George Martin said, well, we've given you 8 seasons to catch up, to do your homework. Here's a few more for you to learn off. And yeah, I think this will be really interesting. We'll push people to, one, read the books in order to have a better understanding of what's going to happen. And I think for people who've read the books, there's going to be a lot more characters that weren't in the season that they wanted to be in the series are going to be there. So that'll be really, really interesting how he adopts that and how he brings more characters to play. He also said there's going to be this is according to comicbook.com. This isn't a direct quote from George Martin, I should say. There's going to be White Walkers, but that they're not. They might be actually called White Walkers. So in the show they're called White Walkers, but they're not actually called that in the books. Well, in the books they're called the Others, and instead that's what they might use in the Starks spin-off series. So like they might have it that in previous generations they were known as the Others, and at some point throughout history, the show's history, that the Others got changed to the White Walkers. Maybe when more and more people start to see them, and it's a name that kind of stuck because they're white and they walk and they're dead and they come from the north, which is full of snow. White Walkers. So maybe that's how they'll adopt it, and it might be kind of a nice slant on that. It might be a subtle nod to the books once again. So I think that'll be nice. If they do that, I haven't read the books anyway, so I think like it's gonna be a long time before this spin-off series even out. They haven't even has suggested a release date, so that is. Keep in mind that like don't be holding your breath for this series. It's going to be quite a while away before we actually get to see Game of Thrones or universe come back to our TVs. It's going to be a long time, but it'll be really, really interesting. I'm looking forward to this few of these spin-off series. Hopefully they all have a different kind of feel to them. They're all kind of, the directors are allowed to take their own kind of slants on it and give it a different look. It'll be really interesting what the different directors do with the various different shows. And yeah, especially the Starks one will be quite popular. They're probably one of the most popular families in Game of Thrones. So going back to the Emmys, after I got sidetracked by Game of Thrones there, it was one of the big surprises that shows that weren't nominated by fans was Stranger Things. Season 3 has come out of Stranger Things and was just released back in July. So a lot of fans were wondering why they weren't nominated for any Emmys this year. And it's kind of simple. The answer behind it is because in order for you to have a show that is qualified to be judged for an Emmy Award in 2019, it has to fall between the dates of June 1st, 2018 and May 31st, 2019. So the fact that the show came out the 4th of July, I think it was, would mean that it has missed out on this year's Emmy Awards, but 2020 awards will be when Stranger Things is up for grabs. And it kind of took a lot of people by surprise who maybe weren't aware of this. Might be right up to until, because the Emmys aren't out until September, but it would have took people by surprise that like the show wasn't nominated, since the awards don't come out till September. But by the time like judges have to get all the submissions, have to look through the shows, have to then judge them based on different criteria, there has to be a long enough date between so that they can judge merits of various different shows. We will get a lot of things submitted throughout different series throughout the year. So obviously I missed this kind of struck me as surprising that Netflix would wait until July before they release Stranger Things and not release it before then, in order to give it Stranger Things a chance in order to be nominated for an Emmy this year. Maybe they wanted to wait till after Game of Thrones, thinking this might be in a prior decision years before the new Game of Thrones is coming out, final season, that it's going to be very, very hard to compete with any show. It's going to be very hard to compete with Game of Thrones. So that's why they left it till May, and they said, do you know what? We're just going to wait till after Game of Thrones. It's going to be a lot easier to compete with. This is one of our biggest shows on Netflix. So let's just wait till after. I don't know if that's kind of the attitude they have going into something like that, and a lot of this foresight would have happened before they released the series, or if it was simply just a scheduling thing that meant that Game of Thrones just simply wasn't going to be, or Stranger Things simply wasn't going to be ready in time to get it out before May or before July. And even July 4th, like that's huge for a huge American holiday, so it would be weird that Netflix released it on July 4th for Americans. You think that maybe July 5th, when everyone is like hungover and took the day off work, would have been the day to put out Stranger Things. Like if I was to schedule, I'd be like, July 5th, everyone's going to binge watch it then, like when they're all really, really deeply hungover and looking for something to watch to cure their student head. That would have been my idea behind it, but obviously maybe it just was scheduling. But yeah, that's why Stranger Things didn't get a nomination. Also, another one that was really surprising to me, another Netflix show that didn't get nominated this year, was Daredevil's season 3. That had got absolutely no nominations, and like for me, that in terms of like comic book adaptations from a comic book to a TV series, season 3 of Daredevil was the best. Punisher put it up to it. Season 2 Punisher put it up to as well. But season 3 of Daredevil, even the whole series of Daredevil, 3 seasons were pure gold, where it was the best comic book series that was released ever, hands down. And I don't think anybody who is a fan of comic books would disagree with that. A few people might just prefer Punisher, but in terms of adaptations from comic book to screen, that I think Daredevil did it best and is beloved by a lot of fans. So a lot of fans would be like really upset that Daredevil did not get any nominations. However, it gets even more outrageous why they missed out on an award that they were nominated in previous seasons. So outstanding stunt and coordination would have been a category that they got nominated in previous seasons. Season 3 had a brilliant prison riot scene. It's about 11 minutes long, and it took only one take to get that full 11-minute scene. Incredible kind of like coordination, and just like to get anything done in one take, but to get something done as coordinated as a fight scene that goes on for 11 minutes is incredible. It's almost unheard of that a show like that took, a scene like that took only one take. It's like one of the longest fight scenes I've ever seen. And it missed out on the stunt coordination, the outstanding stunt coordination, because it was too long. The show shot itself in the own foot, having something so complicated and so long was the reason why it didn't get nominated for an outstanding stunt coordination role. So they have a weird, bizarre rule in the Emmys that a stunt coordination and that wants to be considered for a nomination can't be more than 3 minutes long. And like I said before, it was around about 11 minutes was this prison riot scene in season 3 of Daredevil. So I missed out by like a whopping 8 minutes. Missed out. And it is absolutely bizarre that they wouldn't take any films for consideration based on it being too long of a fight scene. Is bizarre, but that's the reason why Daredevil didn't get any nomination for outstanding stunt coordination. I think Punisher might be up, season 2 Punisher might be up for an outstanding stunt coordination. And like, in fairness, there was, especially that last kind of warehouse attack scene in Punisher was brilliant. Or even the kind of toilet fight scene in like one of the earlier episodes, that also was brilliant. That was, in terms of like fight scenes as well, that was like one really, really good kind of fight scene in the toilet. The way they used the environment around them, how it changed the way they fought is just brilliant. Yeah, definitely deserves a nomination for outstanding stunt coordination. So I'm not too disappointed. I am disappointed with Daredevil, obviously. I think it should be up for a writing award as well. But I don't know if it would make the criteria based off it's taken from a comic book, and for some reason they don't ever nominate anything that comes from a comic book. Snobbery, basically. Chernobyl also gets the nod for 19 Emmys, which I think is brilliant. Actors like Jared Harris and Emily Watson all get nods for Emmys and for their work in the show. Once again, if the Emmys have Best Dead Body Died from Radiation award, they should definitely get, because the special effects, or else the kind of way that they did the bodies as they changed colour was disgusting and impressive, all in equal measure. And yet the show was really, really good and opened people's eyes to like the devastation and what those plant workers and soldiers and miners put themselves through. Like, knew they were going to go to their deaths after once they go into the zones. Like, they didn't think that they were coming back from it. They all knew that they were going to die from radiation poison, or in a few years from radiation poison. But the plant workers, there's a really, really good podcast based on Chernobyl. If you just type in Chernobyl into any app store, to get the podcast that was done, I think, by HBO. They're the ones who produced the podcast, and basically it's the director talking about what he left out, why he didn't introduce like the Russian accent into the show, and different, to give you insight in every single episode. It's really, really interesting. Definitely worth a look if you're looking for a podcast to listen to other than this one. And one of the things that they're saying, that plant workers that were there in the night of the explosion went home, went to sleep, got up and came back into the plant because they knew they had to. They knew the cost of what not going back, running away, basically, and trying to save yourself would have done for the rest of humanity. And they're also kind of pointing out, like, if this happened in any other country, if this happened in any especially Western country, that they don't know, like, they think the death toll could have been a lot higher, because the value of life in like Europe and Western society wouldn't have sent as many men as quickly to their deaths as maybe Russia would have happened, and they probably would have just evacuated the whole city, and to this day you wouldn't be able to go in whatever circumference that the radiation poison was covering. And yeah, so just went through different insights and basically what they kind of discredited from history to what they actually did, and plus the difficulty of getting this information, factual information, basically because there was during the SSR that like Russia weren't going to give over as as much secrets to Chernobyl as possible. Like they're going to hold on to it. So there's stuff that they had to really investigate in order to get out about the show, about Chernobyl. Really, really interesting look on Chernobyl. So definitely check out that podcast if you're a fan of Chernobyl. And if you're not, haven't watched Chernobyl, check out Chernobyl. Definitely worth look. Moving on from that to Quentin Tarantino, and this might be my last topic that I'll be talking about today. And it's probably one of the most surprising. It isn't around Emmy nominations, first of all. It's around Quentin Tarantino. His last movie might be coming up really, really quick. It might be an R-rated Star Trek movie. And yeah, I've talked about this before. Quentin Tarantino said that he's only ever going to make 10 movies. And after that, he's going to retire. Now, he's just finished up on his 9th movie. It's called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So he finished up, that's his 9th movie, and he's in talks with doing an R-rated Star Trek movie, which would be his 10th movie. Now, the details of this movie are kind of there is no details, to be honest with you. There's no real news from last time I talked about it, so just in case you missed that show. Basically, he pitched the idea to J.J. Abrams, the guy from Paramount, who basically was involved in the previous Star Treks, about this idea of having an R-rated Star Trek movie. Paramount and all that were like, yep, sounds cool. We'd love to have you on board. Sent out a commission for a script. The script's now written. It's ready to go. It just needs Quentin Tarantino to look over, to make corrections and a bit back and forth before they can start on production. So since Quentin Tarantino was so busy with his previous movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, they haven't really got a chance to start working on this movie. So it's almost up in the air. So we don't know even if Quentin Tarantino is going to direct this movie. He might be busy on other projects, maybe a different project, and this might be just a kind of a loophole, which I'll get into, and a way of making another movie, as well as this kind of R-rated Star Trek movie coming out. We don't know if the cast from the previous Star Trek movies are going to be brought back. The fact that it will have Paramount Pictures on board, it will have similar writers on board, might mean that they will bring back the cast, or it will be a completely different universe, and we don't know. I imagine, though, especially if this is going to be his last movie, it's going to be a franchise thing, it's going to go out, it would make more sense to bring characters that people know and people already have seen on screen, instead of like creating something new and it being a standalone piece on its own. It would be just, even if it wasn't directly a continuation of Star Trek 4, if it was something on its own, just have the same characters in it, and like people will fill in the blanks for themselves. I don't think you won't really have to explain it. You could just say this is like a different timeline, or this is a different thing. But it would make sense bringing back the old cast from the previous, because it's just people are used to them. People have seen it before. They're recognizable. So I would be surprised if they went with a full new cast, but we don't even know that if Quentin Tarantino is just going to go out and get a whole new set of cast. Very few little details on this, and when pressed about will this R-rated Star Trek movie is going to be his last movie, he said something along the lines of, if Star Trek will be his last swan song, Tarantino said it doesn't rule it out. There may be a loophole. I guess I do have loopholes. If the idea, I throw a loophole into it, he says, which he would do. Like, I guess he wants to do Star Trek doesn't count because it isn't a standalone. But normally I would end up with an original being 10. He does like the idea of ending it on 10 basically, and he isn't, but he's married to the idea of having this Star Trek movie as 10. So he might direct this movie, and since it wasn't an original movie, that it was maybe a fourth or a prequel or a sequel to a different series, that doesn't count as a movie on itself, and he could make a 11th but a 10th movie in his eyes, and that would be his 10 movies, and then he would retire. He could just throw out the idea of like the fact that he wants to make more movies. He is the best director that there ever was, in my opinion. I like a huge fan of Quentin Tarantino, and I was kind of surprised as well that like he's only made 10 movies. I thought he seems that he'd made a lot more. So I was quite surprised that he hasn't made 10 movies already, but apparently not. Apparently he's only made 8. Not 9 now, but it hasn't been released. And yeah, this kind of darker kind of Star Trek movie would be his last. I think the idea of a dark Star Trek is brilliant. I think it will be really, really interesting what he does with it. It kind of be like Black Mirrors almost. Kind of when they did their Star Trek episode, it could be something more like sinister like that, with the same feel, not necessarily same logic of like some computer nerd trapping people that he works with in a simulation, but kind of like a dark, sinister tone to it of some sort. It could be the idea behind it. But yeah, it'd be really, really sad if we are to only get this will be his last movie. This is Swamp Song. The fact that he's already thinking about loopholes, I think I'd be very surprised if this is his last film. In fact, if he's already thinking about loopholes now, there will probably be a loophole, it's safe to say. So hopefully not that this R-rated Star Trek movie won't be his last movie, but possibly could, and you hear it here first if it is. I'll be back next Thursday. Like I said, Gus will be on. We'll be talking about the Spider-Man movie and all things comic book next week. So if you're a fan of comic books, definitely check it out.